If you would put your hands together and give a warm welcome to our moderator, Charley Webb.
Cool. So I teach in the RA department. However, I do quite a bit of production management at music festivals around here. And I know some of you guys in the room may have gone out with me, so I know y'all will probably have questions for our panel here. What I was saying before I had my walk-off music come on there was that it's a mixed bag out there in the world of live events. So sports events, concerts, festivals, all that kind of stuff. You know, a lot of you guys are going to come together later after you graduate here, and you won't even know it's going to happen. Let me introduce our panel here. We have Leon Hopkins, Mr. Jim Pettinato, and Charity Lomax. So guys, the topic is the challenges of concert production and management. And me and Leon were talking, and a lot of those challenges aren't necessarily technical. Right, Leon?
That would be correct.
So one of the things I wanted to kick this off by everybody kind of giving their 2 cents about was understanding the importance of interpersonal skills, networking, that kind of stuff that you guys are doing right now, and how that can propel you in your careers, and especially when you're starting your careers. Anybody want to take that one?
Go ahead, Leon.
Yeah, I guess I'll kick it off here. I just came out of a discussion with students, and the person helping me was Josh. He's in, I don't know his last name, but
I can't remember his last
but
name.
he's a recording engineer. And all the students we were talking to were basically recording. And then what I found interesting is the things he was saying about his industry is everything I observed about the people skills needed to succeed in the live audio world and concert touring. And what it boiled down, nothing really mind-blowing here, but it boils down to basic people skills of being on time, as Jim would agree. Work ethic, attitude, being able to work in a team environment and be liked, and find ways to work problems out internally.
I will say that I find probably one of the most important qualities I look for when we start to talk about hiring people, if we're talking about anything other than are they reliable, are they on time. My next criteria, are they easy to tour with? Are they easy to tour with? Does that mean that, is this person going to require me to work hard at living with you on a day-to-day basis? That would be my top 3 criteria. Technical skill comes after that.
Yeah, I'll agree. And it's also, too, finding the right fit of personalities. Like, somebody, like, energy is such a big thing, and some person might be great for one particular artist and one particular tour, but not right for the other. So I agree with everything that they're saying. Someone that's going to make your job that much harder is not necessarily someone that you want to have around. But yeah, I mean, just trying to fit the right people with the right position and the right tour, energy-wise, is also very important.
Which I think that we've all seen is sometimes why crews they move in packs.
Yeah.
They find a chemistry. You'll find that touring people, they find a chemistry and they move sort of in packs. And maybe the Metallica crew might not be the right crew for the Indigo Girls. And I'm just throwing those out there, but there's a reason why they move in packs. They build a chemistry, they stay, they work as a team. They don't always move. You don't always get everybody, but you'll see a nucleus that travels together, and that chemistry is important.
It's very important. And it's fun.
Cool.
And it's fun.
So that kind of made me think about something when they were saying that. Y'all's experience at Full Sail, what are the size of your lab group? 6 people, right? So that's your core crew. And when you're doing concert production, your core crew is moving around. And one thing that obviously isn't going to happen here that you kind of want to have some insight about, they'll be able to tell you, is your core crew, whatever city you show up at, is going to have to interact with the venue system, the house people, and all that kind of stuff. And there's it can be touch and go sometimes in that world. So do you guys have any advice in dealing with that?
Yeah, I mean, and again, good old fundamental being polite to people. You work with stagehands, and you want them to be excited that they're working with you, and you have to be a leader and a bit of a motivator, you know, and treating them politely. I'm talking about the real basic things that we all learn from our parents and growing up. You know, a lot of these things still apply. They don't go away. So if you can think of this as the real fundamentally. So, but you'll work with different people. You might be in a union hall. You might be in a non-union hall. It really doesn't matter if you know what you're up against and you adjust. I always try to tell people, our young employees, that it's like you've got to have a sixth sense. Like, you know what I mean? You got to have your little radar antenna out, be able to sense what's going on, and be able to kind of steer your actions and how you go about things to work in that environment.
When you will roll into a venue at anything, you're going to be the minority. As a tour, if you roll in a tour of a 2-bus tour, or you roll in a 10-bus tour, you're still the minority. Because let's say you roll in with a crew of 60, if your tour is that size, you're going to have 100 locals. So you're always going to be in the minority. Treating those people with respect, treating them well, working with them as colleagues as opposed to yelling at them, or, you know, you need them way more than they need you. So developing an immediate respect with them and having a good rapport is crucial for your day to go well as a team. And one person can scuttle that day. One hothead, one guy who wants to throw down with the forklift driver because he dropped his case or whatever. Take a breath, say, guys, help me stand this case up, and you push it in. No yelling, you broke my rack. Not the way to do it, not the way to handle it. You need those people on your side.
Yeah, and then that comes back to, guess what? The next time I go out, I'm not bringing that guy. I'm not bringing the screamer, you know?
Yeah.
And I, once again, I agree 100%. You know, you've got locals, and we need them as much, you know, a lot more than they need us. And it is important to just be respectful to people. And there's nothing better when you come back to a building, because these guys, I mean, that's what they do. They do all the local work, and you come back, and they're excited. Oh, my God, I remember that she was nice to me.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that goes, like, because then you hear stories about other crews that come in, because they probably did a show yesterday, and you hear the stories about when they weren't treated well. So it's great when you come back and people are actually happy to see you, and you're happy to see them because they did such a great job.
They will welcome you back.
Yeah.
And especially if it's a tour that repeats, you will see these people sometimes once, twice a year. When you start to tour regularly, you will see stagehands. You'll get to know them. Yeah. On a first name basis.
Okay, so check this out. When you start your career, I tell this to everybody, the people I talk to in this topic. Your path is huge. Even if you don't have a gig yet, your path is huge, right? Your peripheral vision is just 180. You're all about it. As you get out into the working world, if things don't go right, and you know you have confrontations and you have problems, what Jim said is true. People, when these tours come apart, they come together in other forms. Another tour, the guitar tech went over here, the production manager went there. So you've almost doubled your problem if you've had an issue on a tour, because now your name's kind of out there. Yeah, I remember him. We had a little issue there. It was, boy, he got hot-headed over this whole deal. So what you've done is you've taken your big old path and you're starting to whittle down what you can do. So, and then, you know, if you really make, you know, if you don't get it, you'll end up on a cart path, and then you can't work. It's I've seen it happen. So you want to really maintain. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have an issue or a problem, and people do. We all make mistakes. But here's the difference. If people like you, and you've got a good rapport with the people you're around, and you have a little problem on a day, and you've made some errors, you can walk right past it. If you've been a bit of a not in the good graces of everybody all the time, problems become bigger. You get it? It's a very people-oriented industry. It's about the people.
Well, and there's also too, I've seen it with different crew guys and ladies. Sometimes people will have a certain amount of arrogance when they come into all these different markets, all these different venues, because you're on the tour. I'm on the crew, I'm this and I'm that, and it's just, it just doesn't need to be that way. Like, we're all here to do a job, and having that kind of arrogance, you know, the people, the production managers and the tour managers, they'll see that stuff, and once again, it's like, you're not going to be the person that gets called back. So it just pays to have a certain amount of humility and just to be kind.
Thanks, guys. Leon, I'm going to have you clarify something for these guys, just because I'm sure y'all talk about it in Show Pro, but he mentioned union halls and non-union halls, and it's totally different when you interact with a private venue than with a union venue. So maybe you could give a little bit of a definition of those to these guys that they might not have heard.
Yeah, and Jimmy and you guys can kick in, but it's just no, in a union venue, you've got to, there's rules, there's things that you can't do with the equipment that you might do on another day. They have people that work with the set, people work with cabling, people work with the electrics, AC things, and not anybody can do anything, and you've got to be familiar with when you're in a venue. And the production managers always go, hey guys, we're in a, you know, a guy like Jimmy's going to walk up to the crew and go, okay guys, remember we're in a union environment. Look, it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. A lot of times you let these guys do their thing and they're really good.
And it's less work. It's less work for you.
Well, yeah, and which is another part of the whole game of touring, is being able to give instruction on the things that you need done in a day. So just be aware of the two different types. You just got to be careful. Productions can get fined if, you know, when they say it's a dark stage in a union hall, everybody goes to lunch, you know, you can't go up there and twiddle around with a microphone. They fundamentally turn the lights out and say go to lunch, and that's it. So there's rules, that's all.
You will learn most of the fundamentals on the non-union venues versus the union are sort of, the framework is somewhat similar in that they have to be fed at a certain amount of time, they get coffee breaks at a certain amount of time, and you will learn all of those things as you tour. The differences, the fine points come in some of the stronger cities in the union environment, where they may be departmentalized, as Leon was saying. And your production manager and your stage manager will lead you, and they will give you that advance notice. We are coming into a venue, they are departmentalized, this is how the departments will break down, this is how many people you will have, and in this particular venue, IBEW might run the feeder, but the electricians run the lighting cable. And as long as you're cognizant of that, you never get frustrated and say, can't you just do this? You don't. It'll only go completely upside down if you lose your cool, because they're waiting for that. Not waiting, that's wrong. I shouldn't say that. They're not waiting for it, but they will feed on it. Yeah. So you remain cool and go, let them lead the dance, and go in with knowledge saying, okay, my production manager, stage manager, they told me how this was gonna go.
I agree with everything they just said. And if you don't know, ask your production manager. That's basically what it comes back. And especially when you're starting out, you're not gonna, instinctively know this stuff. And it's good just to ask. It'll help you move further along in your path to whether you're aspiring to be front of house or eventually a production manager. But ask those questions and you'll learn along the way.
All right, guys. So on the topic of production management, now a lot of you guys that are in Show Pro, you're kind of leaning, like she said, towards front of house, lighting director, LD, whatever you want to call it. So each of those roles has its different responsibility and challenges. And with production management, you are the puppet master in a sense. And I know from my experience, and I'm sure these guys can chime in here in a second, but that's the exciting thing about production management is what, the front of house guy, when the sound comes up and everything's amazing, yes. Production manager's thinking the same thing about every little detail as it goes down. And in that is the challenge. That's the title of this event. So can each of you guys maybe talk through one of your main challenges in that role?
Wow. Well, it comes back to the responsibility, and every tour is different. Like, there are definitely some tours where the production manager is running the show, as they say. And then there's others where everything sort of falls on the tour manager. And then there's tours where they both work very on the same playing field, the same level. But, it's just having that responsibility because you've got all of these other positions, everybody that's got to do their job. But ultimately, when it goes sideways, the artist wants answers from you. Like, why did, the mic fall out in the middle of the chorus or whatever went wrong? And it's just having that amount of responsibility and it comes back once again, it's like you bring all of your people in that that you can rely on, You know, you keep your tribe together, and you know that that guy's going to do a great job and make you look good, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's got to answer for anything that goes wrong.
My favorite challenge of my job is to build the team and to assemble the tour in advance. I find that part, if you put that together correctly, if you hire the right team, you hire the right vendors, you're involved when the tour comes together, and you help put the shows on sale, you build the CADs, you go in on the ground floor, putting it together, you eliminate a lot of the daily challenges because you've built the framework of a solid tour. That to me is my favorite part of the challenge. You lessen the amount of day-to-day challenges if you go in and lay a good groundwork. That's my favorite challenge of that job.
I guess with that said, I'm working for a vendor, a company that gets hired by these folks, or they have say in the matter on who the sound company would be. So in my position, I mean I toured, so I've been out in the touring environment for quite a few years before I did what I'm doing now. But so I'm listening to Jimmy over here, and I'm going, yeah, I'm trying to feed them people from our company that makes it easy for him to know that his audio team is good. And so take note, there's a little different perspective, you know. In the role I have to play in our company, we want to generate the right equipment and people so that folks down over here are putting tours together. They trust what we do for them, you know, and they know that their team will come together if we do our end of it and we get the right folks, makes the touring world go better.
Well, and for me, and I'm not even a production manager, but for me, the person that has to take care of all of those people, when I know who our vendors are, I'm like, all right, I want this sound guy, I want this lighting guy, because obviously they're all, come with a certain skill set and can do the job, but it's also, once again, having the people that you can rely on, having the people that you're not going to have to worry about them being on time and give you a hard time. So it's like, I'm always like, I love being a part of that process as well when it comes to doing the staffing.
I find it interesting. The tours like people, they like repeat customers, meaning Jimmy's going to have people that he would like to see on TSO this fall, and I have to be sensitive to that. There's folks that, yeah, here we go, right?
I'm a pain in his neck, and I know it.
No, but it's like that with a lot of
No, I've seen it happen. I've heard guys that want guys for other tours, and it became a thing, and somebody else wanted them for, which is a great position to be in when you're the guy that everybody wants, know.
So,
but yeah, it's a big deal.
So what if they're asking me for names and there's two tours that want the same guy over the same time period, So the challenge in our world is, okay, Billy's not available or Susie, but we've got somebody else, and then it's a disappointment for our clients not to get who they want. It really is, and we're sensitive to that. The only thing we can do is hope to fill the shoes and have them go, you know what, this is okay. And it's very difficult. So you get it? It's very people-oriented and not, and somebody might want Jimmy to be their production manager, and he's off doing another gig, and he did another project. The whole thing spins like that.
It's really people-driven. What we do is so people-driven. I can get trucks or PA or lights from anybody. I get them from who I get them from because I like the people who come with it. Mm-hmm. The gear, especially modern gear, it's so good. It's so good that, the difference it's not like the old days where you got a Prism cabinet or an S4. Now everybody has good gear. Everybody has good trucks. The people are really the difference.
That makes a difference.
And that will be you guys.
That's right.
So on that same topic, the production manager that I usually work for is a guy named Michael Allegretto. Do you guys know Michael Allegretto?
I do not.
Well, he owns a company called Optimal Productions, and he does exactly what Charity was talking about by creating those teams that you guys are talking about. And one of the tools that you guys might experience, and I want to ask you guys if y'all do this, is every time we do music festivals, he sends out a after-action report survey to everybody, to the bands, to the techs, to the sound guy front of house like me, whatever, and everybody says a comment about each stage, each thing, and then they use that as a tool to gauge, well, these people are working well together. What do you guys do other than boots on the ground watching it to intake that information?
I think it's just paying attention and getting feedback from the people on the floor. Because I'm in the office for most of the day. And a lot of times, and it comes down to everything when you talk about vendors. I had a situation where I had a bus driver who was horrible, but nobody ever told me. It was like the last day of the tour, and I'm hearing people arguing. And then I went to someone that was on that particular bus that I trust would be fair and honest. And I'm like, hey, what's up with said bus driver? He goes, great guy, sucks as a driver. And I'm like, why are you telling me now? No. We've been on this tour for how long? Why are you just now telling me that? Well, I mean, he's like a nice guy and all. And then I start sort of circling around and asking other people, and I'm hearing all these stories, and it's like just that kind of thing, giving that kind of feedback or asking for it to make sure that people are working, especially if you get into a situation where you couldn't get the guy that you wanted, so you got the new guy, going to the other people, like, how's this guy working out? Because I may not know, because like I said, I'm in the office all day, but it's just also asking for that feedback, just in general from people in different departments.
I like to get out, well, my feedback for me, I'm not nearly that high tech. I'm kind of an old school guy. My feedback comes upward. So from my crew chiefs, it'll come up, crew chiefs to the stage manager to me, or directly from crew chief to me is if they're having someone who's excelling or if they're having someone they're having a problem with. It's pretty word of mouth in our world, and I kind of circumvent a little bit of that in that I do loadouts, and I'm in the loadout every night until the very last case goes in the very last truck, and I'm the last guy who closes the door with my lead driver and my stage manager, and that gives you a window into everybody. At the end of the day, they've been there for 18 hours, how they're interacting with stagehands, how they're loading their trucks, how that loadout is going, because loadouts go fast. On my most recent project, we load out 18 trucks in 2 hours.
Wow.
And it's fast paced, and you can see a lot of window into a crew guy after an 18-hour day where we've done 2 shows in one day, how he treats people at loadout. And it's a good window.
Cool. I think that kind of answers that question. So those of you guys who are RA, what do you guys, and I'm going to kind of get an answer out here and see if these guys can give you some information here. How do you guys see yourself fitting into the concert production world? Just out of curiosity. Anybody out here? Nobody?
From recording hours, you mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Initially it started off from the class to Full Sail. I kind of recognized, all right, well, there's room in work in front of the house, or kind of dealing with the technical sides of things. But I definitely see the value in having that personality that allows you to work with people in a different context, as far as kind of what actually glues the production together, or just makes all the moving parts work together. And that's one of the things that I'm definitely trying to learn more about is kind of the type of approach that allows you to pull all those different moving parts together and manage that, from a global perspective.
I can also say for RA, with the advent of Pro Tools, pretty much every show gets recorded every night by the front of house engineer. But if they're actually recording a show for a DVD or for whatever, for TV, they're going to bring 9 times out of 10, and not always, but they're going to bring a studio guy who's going to be in a truck or whatever. Actually, they're going to do a separate record for that. So it does interact. It does come to play that, you do have studio cats, coming out on the road to actually record shows. And also when they do live broadcasts, like the Grammys and stuff like that, they'll have someone sitting in the truck. It's not the front of house guy that's doing it for the Staples Center. There's somebody sitting in the truck mixing it for what goes to broadcast as well.
When I was at Full Sail in 1985, there wasn't a show pro. It was all audio recording. audio gearheads, audio thinkers. So when I later in my, as my career went on, and I got involved in structuring our growth of road staff, we used to just, we had recording people that wanted to do live sound. It was their best avenue to be around audio. So, both paths are good, and they both interchange. You can learn, I think in the recording, they also get some live sound, right? You're integrating. So, if you're not sure, or you're still thinking about all that, either place, you're in a good place, quite frankly. So, there you go.
Is RA, I'm at a disadvantage because I didn't go here. RA is that recording arts.
Yeah.
So the interface of an RA person to what your reference would be.
Correct. The reason I asked that question is because at a lot of the festivals that I've been doing sound or production management, I've noticed Sirius and XM needing people, simple engineer, just to patch a stereo feed and this kind of thing from a Pro Tools rig and all that.
Got
So I've seeing this pop up a lot more, and I was wondering maybe if you guys had seen any of that as well.
We see it in our world all the time. Just as she was talking about, my main advice would be if you come in on the truck, okay, when we interface with the truck, right, we interface with the truck a lot, okay? and as you're coming in to join the tour for the day or for 3 days or whatever it is, the best truck people know that. And they come in and they try to acclimate with the tour as opposed to steamrollering the tour and saying, well, we're recording today and it's still all about the show. We're going to put X amount of people in this building. We're going to have a show. You guys can record it. And we will help you record it well. But please let us lead the dance.
Yeah.
And as recording truck people, that would be a great attitude. And not all of them have it.
That is true.
But I think the broadcast element, yeah, you're right. And if the live sound people don't get it right, it doesn't help your broadcast or your stem mix or whatever going over the air. So it's a team effort once again. So their approach, they're coming into an environment that's already one big unit. So they're best not to steamroll. Everybody will help everybody. You can count on that. You can have a little bit of a patience. There's a tempo that goes on in a given day, depending on what the mission is.
Well, and you also, too, when you come from, because I've worked in both worlds, like in the studio, you've got 1 million takes. On the road, you got one. And then you've got tomorrow to try and get it right if you don't get it right that day. And so when you come in, if you come in from the studio world into the live world, you have to understand that. And we're also, moving at such a fast pace because guess what? We've got a sound check at this time and doors are at this time. And when you come from, it's like, oh, okay, well, your artist may not show up until about 8 o'clock and you're sitting in the studio. Like, it doesn't work that way on the road. So it's like, it's like a completely different mindset when you do come out into the live environment.
Cool. It kind of sounds like the same thing as you guys interacting with the union crew. Kind of that same kind of vibe there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, not quite ready to open it up to the questions yet, but just out of curiosity, any of you guys at the tail end of the show pro degree program? Like you're about to wrap it up, right? So you guys are getting ready to enter these people's world, in some level or another. Maybe you guys could give a few tips for them to sharpen up as they start to enter that world. Not just the interpersonal skills, but just things that maybe you guys witness people making their entry that make some mistakes.
One of the things I found, like when I came here last year for Hall of Fame, I met some people at the meet and greet that lived locally, and they're like, oh, we want to come and intern. I'm like, well, it kind of doesn't work that way for what I do, but I'm like, if you can get yourself to Miami, you can come to work for me for the day, come work with me for the day. And one of the things that I found was interesting, and I don't know the curriculum for ShowPro, was that they kind of didn't know how being, like, living on the road works. Like, one of the girls said to me, she's like, so you bring this stuff with you every day? And I'm like, yeah. Because she obviously knew the technology. She knew how to plug everything in and everything. But the actual day-to-day lifestyle of being on the road was something that she didn't know, which is something that, I mean, like I said, I don't know what the curriculum is, so it's like, I don't know how you would go to learn that, but that is like, I see sort of like asking, like when you're working at the shop at Clair, you know, talking to the guys that are coming in that have been doing this, like that, I think those are good questions to ask about just the lifestyle and how to prepare yourself for being on the road.
Yeah, good point.
Cool. And she brought up the shop. Now, a lot of you guys that start at a company like where Leon works, you'll start in a shop, correct?
Yeah, there's a training for new employees. It lasts quite a while. 5 months, I think, is where we're
Yeah,
at.
you graduate from school and then you go to Clair school.
Yeah.
So give them some examples of some things that they might, like some things that we don't do here at Full Sail just because of, like cross-loading a truck, weight balancing a truck, all that kind of stuff that they would learn at a shop. Is that a typical type of thing?
Yeah, I think we actually have an entry-level curriculum, right? And it's got technical topics, and then we started years ago, I called it a step beyond audio. It has nothing to do with technical stuff. So that list got bigger than the technical list. Point being, you do have to learn all these things, and we like to go over everything that we can with all of our new employees so that they know that a truck holds 80,000 pounds and that you can only put 12,000 on the front steer and yada, yada, yada. You know, there's a lot of things to learn. You just got to be open-minded. And one thing I like to say about if you're going to go work for a company, make it because you want to work for that company. You know, it's got to be a nice two-way road, all on the same page. Whether it's this company, another company, whatever your goals are. If you're going to be an independent, that's fine. There's people that make a living, but if you do go work and you're looking for an environment with a company, make sure it's not just because they do big tours and all that, because that's kind of a given, isn't it? You know, so you want to make sure you've got a nice relationship. I think I went down a rabbit hole here, didn't I?
No,
But-
I think you're in the right place.
So, first of all, make sure this is what you want, and that this employer, whoever it may be, has a career path that you think is good for you or offers you what you think you need right now. That's my advice on that end of it.
And if you aren't so inclined to go to work for a vendor, I guess your entry road, put yourself in every situation that you can. Work as a stagehand. Take calls with local sound or lighting companies, whatever it would be your proclivity to do. Put yourself in the gig. You know, you got to get yourself out there is step one. No one can recommend you until they see you work. So whether you work for a promoter as a runner, step one is to get out there and say, and have people notice, this person is on time and they are dependable. I can lean on this person. That is step one. And your technical skills will, as I said earlier, they're down here. The first thing people will look for in you, were you on time? Were you dependable? Can I lean on that person? Is that person reliable? Get out there, do whatever you can do. Unless you have the opportunity to go to work with someone like Claire who is, you know, I'm not just a client, I'm a friend kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we do both directions, yeah.
So, you know, I think that they are the cream of the crop, but there's only one Clair Brothers, you know. If you can't enter a situation like that, get out there and work for people, just get out and do shows.
Yeah, I tell people, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, doing the local thing also too, comes back to what I was saying is, until you can get that job at Clair or whatever company, you work locally and you get to see actually how a tour, like you get to see it all day, you know, 18 hours of how that works. And you might decide, you know what, this might not be the path that I wanted to take, which is fine, you know, but working locally is a good way to get your foot in the door and a good way to see, especially when you're starting out, how the whole system works too, because you might change your path or what have you, but it is a great way to get started.
Yeah, and you know, in regards to audio, we're not the only game in town. There's other good companies out there. So, you know, if you can't go one place, go another place. If for some reason it works out. I've had a lot of people come through the regional company world where they've done one-offs, worked with a smaller company, and they tend to probably learn some things that are really valuable on that level. You know, I don't kind of look at it like the big leagues and the little leagues. I think doing gigs are hard no matter what you're doing. We still do club gigs if we have a client that's out. I think they're hard. I think, you know, you don't have the facilities, you don't have the AC distribution that you would, you don't have the stage hands, and that takes a lot more creative thinking to get through the day. But I guess my point of all that is, you know, find opportunity where it exists. Don't be set to go down one road. There could be some other roads. I couldn't have told you when I was your age where I would be in 300 years, 30 years. But that's kind of the fun of it. And you'll find places to go that, and utilize them. Jim's absolutely right. Go find opportunities. If it's at a club working with a band, boy, there's a lot of ways you can learn audio. There really is. But look at it, you're building a foundation.
Yep.
And, you know, what's that old thing that you can't build a tall something on a narrow base, right? So if you're in it for the long haul, get your base built. Be patient. Build it as you can. You know, you don't have to be on the Rolling Stones next week. It doesn't have to be, right? You can be on something else. You can do other things. Keep crafting or cultivating your craft.
Really good point, guys. So pop quiz for you show pro guys. Who is already doing load-ins at the Amway? Good. Cool. I've seen some people there in the past 2 or 3 months doing the load-ins. Best way to learn, like flipping cases. I know that's a simple little thing, but I've seen people come out that don't know how to do that, and that could be the difference between somebody like them watch, hey, look, he knows how to leave a knee on the case and not drop it on his foot, you know, little things like that. So definitely take advantage of those opportunities. We didn't get a real chance for these guys to tell you where they're from. So can you guys kind of one road story, what you do exactly from each of y'all?
Yeah, I'm currently part of the road staff scheduling management team. I get involved in the hiring and all that. I started years ago. Playing music is really my what got me into all this. And then I found audio to be a great way to, you know, go about my career. But so I'm currently so I've been in a company environment for the last 30 years. So I've watched the change of the industry and the change of the company and how to grow. So that's my capacity now is the focus of our road staff growth. So.
I started out as a lighting guy. I started on the band side. I've always been on the band side. My growth was very organic in that I started as the lighting guy for a band in a van. And I drove the van and I helped set up the equipment, and then I ran the lights and we packed it up and we moved it on. That was 31 years ago, but it was a very organic path for me. I always came from the band side, and that progression is still a viable way in. You work for a band, you prove yourself, you work for a bigger band. You prove yourself, you work for a bigger band. That band might have a manager that manages 4 other bands, and if you prove yourself, well, you know, you might go from a club environment to a theater environment in that process. And that was my road in, is I was a lighting operator, became a lighting designer. At that point, somewhere along that way, became the lighting designer production manager. Because when you're the reliable guys, they say, you know, you're going to be the production manager. You're going to advance the dates. And it builds from there. And then probably 15 years ago, I morphed into just doing production.
I started in recording, worked in studio for 9 years, and then, but I always wanted to go on the road. I always wanted to do sound. And once I got into the studio, you know, I did that, dabbled in it a little bit, and then I got the opportunity to be a tour manager. Like, I started on the road as a tour manager, had never done it before, but it's sort of like the same skill set, sort of managing things, but I had to learn the ins and outs of actually being on the road. I didn't know that much about the lifestyle, but one of the things you said is true. Like, I worked for one band for 6 years, then they broke up, and I didn't know anyone, and was trying to get my foot in the door with other bands and so on and so forth, and I worked for one artist, and that manager managed a million other bands, and from that one artist, pretty much all the work I've done on the road for the past 6 years have come from working for that one artist and different artists that that manager manages. So right now, I'm a road manager for Janet Jackson.
Cool. Thanks, guys. I think we can go ahead and start taking some questions to get some ideas flowing up here, if anybody has any. So let's do it. Anybody got their hand up? Can't see through the lights.
One over there, I can see.
I think we got a hand up over here if you want to walk the mic over there.
You can tell.
Yeah, I can't tell.
We're the band right now. We can't see anything.
My peripheral vision's horrible.
My question is for Mr. Pettinato. You mentioned earlier creating the framework for a solid tour and how important that was early in the beginning. Could you kind of talk about the details there?
If you're lucky enough, when you are hired as a production manager, you get involved early enough in the process that you are afforded to be there at the ground floor when they put the tour on sale. And you're allowed to help build the CAD. So that means you get to place the stage in the venue. You get to place front of house. It's like building the bones, really, of your day that's gonna happen 6 months from now. And at that time also then you are talking to the designer saying, this is how we have built the show. So we need you to design within these parameters. I don't want you to build something that needs 85 feet of width because we're now selling on the sides. Those are the kind of things that you get if you get in early enough. If you're lucky enough to get in early enough, you can help build those bones. And now you've started talking with the designer, and now you move forward as to, okay, hiring the right crew around that, getting the right vendors around that. Did that answer your question?
Okay, we can't see it past the light, so I don't see if there's any other hands up. We got one over here. Oh, back there. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Max. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about radio etiquette, especially on site with other crews. If you could kind of talk about being conservative and what to do, what not to do.
He's talking about comms.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, that's so huge. So this band that I work for, some of the artists have radios in their room so that they can communicate with us when they need anything. And I mean, everybody that's on this tour knows that you gotta be, especially Channel 1, because that's pretty where, all the production, well, normally lives on Channel 1, but that's where the artist, the channel that they're on. You really, I mean, you know, depending on the crew that you're on, like, you guys can joke, but, you know, on certain channels, but you definitely have to, because you could be chatting with me and just cutting it up, and I'm walking down the hall and you're cutting it up, and that person that's standing right there is hearing what you're talking about. So you gotta really be really cognizant of what you say on the radio. I don't care what channel you're on, even, because I might jump over to audio because I need to ask you a question and you guys are talking about whatever, but you definitely have to be really conscious of what you say over the radio.
Hey, let's expand that from the radio. So you're sitting in catering, and you have this opinion about how the guitar sounded or something, right? And there's someone sitting over at the table at the catering. You really don't know who they are. Well, it's the guitar player's wife, maybe, you know? All I'm saying is that point, well taken, by the way, good question, but expand that into the rest of it. It's be careful how, you know, who you're around, what you say.
That's talk for the bus at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And then technically, always push, pause. There's a gate. On every radio, there is a gate.
Mute.
And you guys know what gates are. Push, pause, talk clearly into the microphone.
Oh, yeah.
You will see people key a mic. The microphone is here. They talk this way, and they're already talking as they're pushing the button, meaning that everyone has missed the first part of their conversation.
Yeah, learn that.
Push, pause, talk directly into the microphone. Do not yell into it. Clearly.
But it's funny how something that seems so mundane is such a big deal. And it's also when you're in buildings, like, just not even to go even deeper into it, but like, you're in buildings that have horrible reception, and you can hear, I'm like, a charity for whoever, and I'm, you're halfway on the other side of the building, and you can hear me, and the other person's not answering. Well, guess it's not reaching that far. So then it's like, hey, do you need me to relay? And so you'll relay, but it's like, it sounds like such a mundane thing, but it's so huge when you're trying to communicate with someone, and they're a million miles away on the other side of the building.
And there may be days where, local police, the local stagehands, the building, they may have your channels or some of your channels. Your production manager or your production coordinator will guide you. Hey, audio, you're normally on 2, today you're on 15. That happens, that happens. And festivals make it even, if you get on a festival site, you might have 4 acts there that are on the same radios, and then it gets a little messy, and you've got to kind of you have to react to that and see what's available. Or your production manager will probably go talk to the other production managers and say, hey, we'll take 1 through 3, you guys take 4 through, and people are reasonable, I find.
Yeah, I found with just to add to that, with the festival thing, usually if it's a front of house monitor guy situation, sometimes you'll have a redundant second radio that's not even on the same frequencies as that, just so those two people can have their conversation.
You know what I find interesting? Every time we get into conversations, look at the topics we're covering, things that you kind of don't even think about. So just think about what it takes to build that foundation. There's so many topics. It's huge. So you don't just walk out there. You got to keep, gathering all these skills and knowledge of the environment you're going into. I mean, here we are talking about what to say on a radio. I mean,
or not.
Was that it? Yeah, or not. But the point being, there's a lot of things to know to be in a production. So be patient, learn it all, observe.
Well, and I also, too, not to interrupt, but it's my job to know everyone, and I'm always amazed at the end of a tour, no matter how long it is, that we've been together for a year, and I'm like, oh, I was talking to Jim the other day. Who's Jim? Like, how do you not know who Jim the audio guy is? We've been on the same tour for a year, and I think if there's one thing that I can impart, it's like, get to know, like, just because you're audio doesn't mean you can't hang out with the video guys. It does tend to be very cliquey. But it's really important to be as a team. Like the best crews that I've worked on were the crews, and we also have like had a lot of people, because you bring your tribe together so we know each other. But when you're starting out, get to know people from the other departments, and it's fun. It's just more people to hang out with, but it's also very important. It builds that camaraderie as well.
Cool. I think we have another question over here. She's coming.
Need a mic.
So I have a question. Could you, any one of you, explain the situation that you were in, that it manifested itself into a problem but could have been avoided, so that we could learn from that and not have it happen to us?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I don't think I heard the whole question.
Things that could have been avoided, right? Something that you foreseen that you could have maybe steered in another direction. Yes, usually it's the reaction to problems, how you react. And, you're around people. There's emotion on the road. People sometimes are tired. They've been a little grumpy maybe in the morning, who knows? And I think the way you steer around issues would be, to find a calm way to handle problems amongst people. In terms of equipment and all that, well, that's, you could take it to a whole nother direction here. Safety, make sure you've got certain things in place when you're flying a PA to be preemptive to having a safety issue, catastrophe, But you're always looking ahead. I think one of the skills that you develop on the road is being able to plan steps ahead,
That's what we do.
Yeah.
Plan.
Leon took the words right out of my mouth. What I was going to say is, the more forward-thinking you can be, eliminates problems. If you you should be on the show that you're on that day. I'm already in tomorrow, as you know, the crew is putting the show up that day. I'm planning for tomorrow, and hopefully my stage manager is, and my lead driver, and we are all planning for tomorrow, and hopefully that alleviates getting into the problems. You know, you get in front of it, know the building you're going into, recognize what hurdles that building may have, or that local crew, or anything, weather. You might be facing weather on that drive. Is there a different route to take? Is there construction? Is there a situation? And try and get in front of it. Getting in front of those situations is really about eliminating problems.
Yeah, it's all about being proactive. And once again, talking about the foundation, like when you're sitting in rehearsals and the bands play the same song 1,000 times, and you have to be there, but advancing the tour, so as much as you can contact the buildings, and when you talk about doing the CADs, and you walk in, it's like, wait a minute, the stage not where it's supposed to be, but it's like you advance that, and it's how you deal with it from there. But weather is huge. Something happens, or your artist gets sick, like my artist got sick, and it's like, okay, well, now we're gonna skip this city. I'm like, yeah, but we don't have hotels for those days in another city. And it's like, trying to, having the foresight to be like, okay, well, maybe we might end up having to leave this other city, which we did. So I'm already got the travel agent checking in 2 cities from now, and we don't even know, that might not even happen, but just trying to get ahead of it and thinking what else could possibly maybe happen in this particular, whatever the scenario might be, and just trying to get in front of it.
It's a big logistic game out there as well. When you think about it, it's all these pieces in motion. Every day they come in the building, out of the truck, back in the truck, out down the road, and you have to think ahead. Where you keep empty cases, where you put your wheel boards, where, it makes you, for people, you have to have that skill set to be able to think ahead about 20 steps. Not to bypass the show, because, but we always say you're thinking about the loadout during load-in, and the important part's the show, obviously, but you are thinking about how to, expedite your part of the production, how to integrate quickly and efficiently. I can't even load a dishwasher without making it a certain way. True story, and it's just kind of funny. I use that as a joke, but if you get my point, you do get this skill set of thinking ahead. Hopefully you get real good at that. And all that does is help you manage your day. And then you do prevent problems,
Cool. Any more questions? There, we got one right there.
There's somebody in the back.
Good afternoon. What are some of the more, I wouldn't say trivial, but like monotonous tasks you'll perform in a day on tour?
Well, I was gonna say, I absolutely hate dealing with food.
Oh, boy.
All I wanna do is eat it. But one of the things that I learned very early on in my career is hungry people are not nice people, and they're not happy. So when I'll be sitting at breakfast thinking about, oh God, what am I gonna get for after show food? Our 4th meal of the day. But that to me is one of the most monotonous things, but it's like probably one of my biggest challenges every day is, oh my God, I need to find a place that's open late. Oh my God, you want it to be hot, and then I'm like, oh my God, it's just worst part of my day. Very monotonous.
I'll back that up. Catering advance is monotony. It is the worst part of the job, dealing with people's food. Us dealing with feeding you guys is the worst part of the day. And it can be great, when the catering is great.
When the catering is great, it's great.
But trying, to feed 80 people and pick the right thing.
Well, yeah, because it's like, well, God, okay. Because you're advancing these menus weeks in advance, and it's like, oh God, well, in Houston, it's like already doing Mexican food. I can't do Mexican food, tomorrow in Dallas, and just like it's so monotonous, and it sounds so mundane, but when you get out there and you're hungry and you're like, oh, we had Mexican yesterday, and it's like, oh, sorry.
I don't know about you, but typing the day sheet.
Oh, the day sheet.
Typing the day sheet, some days it's fun, but the simple task of assembling today's information, informational sheet.
Trying to make it
And we call it a
idiot-proof.
day sheet. And I don't know if you guys, if they go over that with
Yeah,
you guys.
that's another thing. Like, do you
While
know
you're
that?
here.
Yeah.
A day sheet is something that, depending on the tour, either the production coordinator or the production manager will distribute. And now with the advent of email, it's so much nicer because we used to have to post them everywhere.
Yep, slide them underneath the door.
And now we email them to people, but that's monotonous. That's a
very.
monotonous
And
task.
it's also, because, and if you don't know, it's like, okay, this is what you're doing tomorrow. And, you know, for a lot of people, you got some people who don't read them. And they're like, hey, Charity, what time? And I'm like, I spent an hour doing that day sheet. You better read it. But it's very monotonous. But it's also, it's very, very important because that's the difference between something getting held up at load-in because somebody didn't know what time they were supposed to be there. And it's my responsibility to make sure that you know that. And it's your responsibility to read the email to know when to be there.
Yep.
Okay, here's some monotony for you. Scheduling 180 people on gigs that don't really exist yet, under conditions that take particular skill sets that you know is going to come up. You got all these clients coming at you, you've got 12 salespeople coming at you, and you've got to, so that's just something I deal with. But the point being, when you're kind of blinded by things you don't know, you have to figure out a way to be prepared for that. But that's a little bit monotonous, trying to sift through all the, you know, places people need to go from our company. Very challenging on that end of it.
We got any more questions out
I
there?
think there's somebody in the back.
Yep.
I just kind of wanted to kind of touch up on someone else's question. When you have an on-site with a lead that happens to be a leader of leaders and not necessarily a leader of the crew, she better works with the site coordinators. When she becomes or he becomes hostile and you're a crew member trying to like figure out and diffuse the situation, what could be a good way to just show you want to be proactive and want to help whatever situation that they may be in so that you're not going to end up getting hurt by back talk from them?
I think, I hope I understand the situation. You're on the tour, and tell me if I got this right. You're on the tour, you're in the lighting department. The guy you're working with in your department goes off on a stagehand or has a confrontation with a stagehand, and now your lighting stagehands, or you're worried about how they're going to react to you guys? Did I get that right?
The situation was kind of like my lead at the time had gotten into an altercation with her brother, who was also on the crew with us, and the brother ended up having a physical altercation with her sister in front of the insomniac lead, and they had everybody was just, eyes were on us, and especially the crew on the specific site. So it was kind of like I was just kind of standing there with deer in the headlights.
I have been very fortunate to not have too many situations like that, but I have seen altercations happen amongst touring crew, and I think that's where the closest parallel I can make. And if you're the bystander to two of the, say, people on the same team who happen to get into it, number one, the first thing, notify the next hire person. If you're inside the lighting department and you have two guys who are inside the lighting department going at it, call the crew chief on the radio ASAP, or stage manager ASAP. Third thing, to avoid embarrassment, get it off the floor. Get it into a vom, get it outside the floor. If it's on the floor, get it off the floor, because you risk looking like clowns. And it really turns into a clown show where you have two tour guys on the same team who are fighting amongst themselves. And I think that's the closest parallel I can draw to what you said. But as a third person outside that who's close to it, number one, try to diffuse it, pause it, anything you could do, hey, break it up, get it off the floor, and then call your next higher person above to help diffuse it.
Yeah, I mean, and if you have a problem with someone, and I'll chime in, that definitely don't do it in public. Like, you go to a room and you have that conversation, because it just makes all of us as a touring collective look bad when those type of things come up.
So and then in your case, I guess you were kind of maybe in more of an attack mode by somebody that you didn't have the chance, maybe, right? Yeah. So you had to react. I think you take a deep breath, and you just have to be able to, if you're going to take leadership role in anything like this in this business, you've got to be able to bring people down. So you know what I'm saying? So you got two choices. You can walk away, or you can deal with it, right? And sometimes your best, but anything you do to solve a problem like that will have an outcome, possibly unknown. I've always found approaching the person and just trying to work it out, you know, and if you take the calmer tone, you'll find that people will tend to come on to that level with you. If you elevate, all you're doing is having a screaming match. So having some patience, a little bit of calmness, and how you deal with these things will get you a lot further.
So one of the places I see this come up, this kind of stuff, in the festival world is when touring acts come through and there's guest engineers, house engineers, and this kind of thing. And there's been a word that they've been saying that, in my experience with Full Sail students, the idea or the term advance, what does that mean? So a technical rider advance from a touring crew to, let's say, a music festival or something like that. Can you explain to them what that entails, like a typical advance?
The advance, in my book, and in everyone should be, is everything. It's the cornerstone on which every single day is laid. The exchange of information in that we advance or we broadcast information to the locals, in that we would like to load in at this time, we need this many stagehands, catering should be up, if you're not touring catering, catering should be up at this time, we are going to be parking this many vehicles, we are going to be parking this many buses. The list is large and much too large to just read it all, but it's the cornerstone of the day. There's nothing more important, I feel, than a proper advance. And if you exchange information correctly, your day will go, in addition to what we talked about earlier, where we put the show on sale and get the bones of it built correctly. If you advance that right, your day will go smooth. There's nothing worse than a bad advance or a lack of an advance,
Yeah.
right? I mean, when you have people, when you're struggling to get in touch with people, or you can't get information exchanged, that's going to be a bad day.
Yeah, and it's good to, like, a lot of people don't like to do it through email. Do it through email and on the phone if you can, just to have that backup. Because when you walk in and you don't have the things that you've already advanced, you know, and you've had 4 phone calls about it, it's like, well, remember that email where I said this and you said yes? Well, here you go. Like, why is it not here? And it's just so important, because it'll ruin you if you show up and it's not right.
Yeah, and I can see this one on a couple different levels. It's the band coming into the festival, and then sometimes we are the company we're receiving all these bands that are on the road that are coming through. So when you're the sound company and you're providing that service for the festival, we work on it weeks in advance. We're talking to, so where Jimmy's doing the big framework of getting all the people there and getting that sorted, we would be contacting his audio people to make sure that the spec of what they need is being accommodated. So, I mean, even to like if you're doing a Farm Aid or any large festival, to the point where we've got the inputs laid out on every band, considering set change times and all that. So we have to preemptively know, we have to reach out and communicate with audio people that are coming through. So that's how that works from the sound company point of view. So it's a lot of work. We'll have 4 or 5 people prepping equipment, board consoles, you know, A and B systems. They're, you know, the talkback, the snakes, you name it. The interfacing of, maybe they're bringing a console. Maybe Jimmy's monitor guy in their band, they got to have their own console. So we've got to have 3-phase AC sitting there for them to plug into. Got to be able to interface their console into the snake system that's going to feed maybe a broadcast truck as well. So there's a lot of planning.
It's an enormous part of our job. You know, I mean, it's everything really. It's the whole ball of wax. I mean, to me, and in your job as
Yeah.
well, you know, where I'm advancing tech, she's advancing hotels. You know, it's a huge part. It's enormous.
I'm sitting here like just remembering things like when you show up and you're like, well, I didn't even know. Like you hear that, I didn't even know. I didn't even know you were bringing your own console. I didn't know you had a chef. I don't have anywhere for him to cook. I'm like, but we advanced
We
it.
talked about this.
We talked about this. So and it's just following up. It's very important.
Cool. Any more questions out there, guys? Got one over there.
Are there any, as you all grew into the professionals that you are now, are there any things that you grew through that were unnatural to you, like, you know, just as a person, but you saw that you needed that to develop that part of yourself to be successful in your industry?
Yeah, I was horrible at loading dishwashers. I think we all have to find our way and morph into things. I'm sure everybody comes across a particular topic that isn't quite natural to them, and that's kind of okay, you know. Probably the better part is figuring out those things that you don't fit into, and then knowing you have to overcome them in some way, shape, or form, figure out what to do to get past it.
I was lucky enough, I think, my path was very organic, very gradual over the course of a lot of years. So I kind of eased into a lot of things. I don't think that I got to grow into things or branch out into them. I was never faced with anything that I thought was particularly unnatural to me, but that was, I think, a byproduct of my pathway to here.
I think situational awareness is because every tour is going to be different, and your job will ebb and flow, and your responsibilities and what might be expected of you will change. But I think just like looking at a situation like, okay, well, I didn't know how to do that, and sort of file that away, like I need to find out about that. I mean, it just things that come up. I mean, unnatural, I haven't had anything unnatural that felt unnatural, but there were definitely situations where it was something that maybe I didn't know. And I asked, and it's always important. If you don't know, ask. Don't be embarrassed to ask, you know, because I'd rather you ask and get it right than not do it at all or do it wrong. So, but yeah, I mean, just be cognizant of it and just, you know, take mental notes and just learn as you go.
The first time someone ever said to me, as a young production guy, okay, well, we're going to have to bridle that point, and you're going to lose all your trim. And I honestly, I said, what's a bridle? And this was a long time ago, but if I didn't ask that question, ask. I didn't know. I didn't know what a bridle was, and I asked. You know, that pops up in my head all the time. It was a long time ago, and ask. Just, you know.
I think when I started, I was on stage, I was slow at miking a drum kit comparative to people who were good at it. And I was probably over meticulous, you know, but what I had to do was learn how to be quicker at it. It's like, well, how's that drum kit coming? You know, boy, it sure looks good, but how's it, you know, you gonna be done anytime today?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, I'm just telling you an honest story.
Situational awareness.
Yeah, exactly. and then I was new, and what I had to learn was you got to fit all these things in the time of day, and maybe I learned how to prepare better, get cabling, and I learned how to make a drum loom by looking at the drum kit before I even got to the drum kit, and I could come up pretty close. You know what I mean? So we're not perfect. We're not going to go out there and do it right all the time. We've all struggled, believe me, to some degree.
Cool. So for the Full Sail guys here, I'm just going to ask you guys to maybe impart some wisdom upon these guys. What is something that you got from Full Sail that you still kind of carry with you as an asset each day? And now I know there's a lot, but the one that like light bulbs up in your head where you're like, oh yeah, okay, that's where that came from.
I'll say, the real world education. My last month of school, advanced recording, you do your lecture and then you have your labs. Every lab that I had was at 5 o'clock in the morning. I graduated from school, I went and worked at a studio, and I worked from 8 p.m. until the last session got done, or the next shift started at 8 a.m. I am so good at staying awake. I'm so good at being up late, and it was from being here. It was real world, because you don't know. I mean, God, the job that I have now, I work, when I was on the Eagles, like 5:30 in the morning till 1:30 in the morning are my hours. And this place definitely prepared me for the long work day.
I think what I kind of take from it is that I found it kind of nice to know there were people that were so concerned about what I was going to do in the future and the way I was treated by instructors and by the folks who ran the school. At that time, it wasn't near the size. It was in Altamont Springs, But I think what I took away was there are people that will help you, and if you reciprocate properly with people, they'll help you get down the road.
All right, we're getting close here to the end. Is it any more questions out there? We got one right there. Yes, sir.
Hello. Sort of in the lines of the previous question, were there any challenges or things that you had to overcome during a certain transition, like starting at Clair Global, or your transition from LD to production manager, or working from the studio directly to becoming tour manager? Like, how was that transition for you, and were there any challenges that you had to overcome?
Well, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I was going from, other than having sort of the fundamentals, like I was lucky because my first tour, the artist that I was working for was doing support, which is great. I'm so glad that that's how I started, because I learned so much by watching, the headlining act. But I knew people that were on the tour that were like, and they knew, I was like, hey, you know what? This is new to me. They're like, we'll teach you everything you need to know. And I think it's just about letting people know what you want to learn, and also having the humility to say that I don't know what I'm doing and I need help. And so therefore, those hurdles got a lot smaller, because I was like, I need your help. I want this knowledge. So, it didn't seem as daunting, to go from point A to point B.
I think for me, one of the biggest challenges in my career was transitioning out of being a lighting designer and letting it go, and allowing the lighting designer that I hired be the lighting designer. And it hurt for the first few tours to sit in front of house and not say, I wouldn't do it like that. And they humored me for a little while, like, what would you do? And I realized, get off this riser, get out of here. That was probably a transitional point in my career that was challenging. And I've enjoyed my career a lot, but that was a tiny bit of pain, letting go of that console. Because I always tell people that was the part of my career that I really liked.
I think my transition from the road to the world that I live in now was kind of hard, because I wasn't ready to come off the road. I was actually offered to work on a new program for the company, and it was like withdrawal. For like 2 years, I'm going, well, I got to be going somewhere, don't I? I mean, I haven't been to Japan in a while. This is really not fun, So I think to get my mindset into, what I was doing, because I still love shows. I go visit our clients all the time and road people, but that was one of my transitional. And then for some people, coming off the road is a transition that's might be personal related. I don't know. It's travel industry's tough. I don't know how long people really want to be out there. And I mean, if I said, okay, who's going to be out on the road for the next 30 years, who would raise their hand and say, that's me? Maybe somebody would. Maybe you don't know. I guess you know, my guess is you don't know. So you have to get out and do these things and see how that works for you.
And it goes by so fast. Like when you're in it, like you just don't even realize how, like you say, okay, you're gonna do this 30 years from now, and then 20 years later, you're like, wow, I'm still doing this, Yeah. And when you're in it, and if you're happy, that's the other thing. And it does go by so fast when you're happy and you're enjoying it.
Because they're long days. The day vanishes, you're gonna work, depending on what you do, anywhere between 12 and 18 hours a day. And days click off pretty fast, weeks click off pretty fast, a tour clicks off pretty fast, and before you know it, you might have been on that tour for 3 months, 4 months. That's 4 months, that's gone. And it's over really quickly. It's a fast-paced life.
Yeah, and that's interesting because it does go on. You be patient and figure out where you're going and take the time to get good at it. You don't have to, you can challenge yourself to get to a certain level, but don't be, it's like people that want to be front of house mixers or monitor mixers. You can do that now if you go find club bands. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you were to take a path and learn the industry and all these other things we're talking about, and they become a tool in your tool bag, when the opportunities to get into the more high-stress position, let's call it, or something of, of that nature of mixing, you're probably more prepared. That's in the live world, or maybe in the studio world too, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Cool. Well, you guys give it up for these three. Okay, you guys are going to hang around for 5 or 10 minutes, talk to everybody?